Good morning, friends. Welcome to this Internet and Tech CHRO Roundtable, where we are going to move beyond the hiring based metrics and explore how tech people leaders are driving unit economics, maximizing AI native engineering velocity, and building resilient product led teams to protect software and internet margins. So, welcome everybody. Let me introduce the speakers, the panelists first. So we have Mr. Abhinav Shrivastava with us. Welcome, Abhinav.
Thank you.
And we have Dr. Brillian with us. Welcome,
Hi, good morning,
Brillian.
everyone.
We also have Mr. Ankush Arora. Welcome, Ankush. Thanks for giving us time.
Thanks, Amit. Hello, everyone.
And we have Mr. Ovesh. Hello, Ovesh.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So Abhay is shortly joining us, and in the meantime, let's start. So the topic is that how the basic outline is that how is HR helping solve business problems. So there are going to be three rounds in the discussion, and each panelist will share his thoughts on each topic in the each round. And participants, in case you have any questions, you can, like I mentioned, you can start typing it in the chat box, or you can park it with you. And whenever we get time, after we'll try at the end of each round to come to it, or we'll address all the questions in the end. So let's start the first round. So I would like to start by asking each panelist that how are your HR teams designing performance and incentive frameworks that directly impact customer lifetime value (LTV) and protect tech profit margins. And we also have Mr. Abhay with us. Hi, Abhay. Thanks for giving us time. Welcome. You're on mute.
Hi, Mr. Abhay.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Welcome. So let's start. So I'll again start by mentioning the topic of discussion in the round one. So I would ask the panelists on how are your HR teams designing performance and incentive frameworks that directly impact customer lifetime value and protect tech profit margins. So if I could request Abhinav to start the session and this round, please.
Sure. Thank you so much, Amit, first of all, for the opportunity. I think it's great, always great to kind of talk to people and good morning to everyone. I think the question is very valid in today's era, right? And I think traditionally what we have been doing is that we always kind of focus on the activity metrics, right? So in terms of the projects delivered and the various activities around it, right? But I think slowly and gradually there has been a shift in terms of how we are kind of measuring the outcomes, right? And the focus now has been more around business outcomes, right? So if you see that now more and more companies are focused, and the way we are also as HR professionals assessing performance is around what is the impact one has created on the organization at large, which eventually impacts the PNL, right? And when it comes to PNL, obviously customer is the core of it, right? So I think that is where the shift I'm seeing in the industry, and I have also seen that in the companies where I've been working or I've worked in the past, is that we focus now on two things. While earlier the focus was on business results alone, now I think a large part of it are also moving from business results to customer focus as well. And I can give an example. In one of my past organizations, we kind of shifted the needle in terms of how we assess performance, and we brought in the element of customer focus, which carries equal weightage as a business delivery would carry, right? So and typically in an Indian market, I'm sure you would agree, Amit, is what gets managed gets measured, right? So that is what it is. So which is where I would say that it's more of shifting from activity metrics to business outcomes. Now, what does that mean? It means that having more, what do you say, incentives are no longer linked to sole delivery, but they are linked to more of customer adoption, retention, net promoter score, right? These are the things. And as HR, it's our responsibility to kind of educate and help the employees to come up the curve and understand that the expectations are changing over the period of time, right? It's no longer, so there's a saying, right? What brought you here will not take you there, right? So it's the same thing that, okay, what you have been doing, and it's a change management in my opinion, right? So it takes time for people also to understand that, okay, the way things are evolving, the way we are assessing performance is very different how we have to do in the past. So I think a higher amount of ownership and accountability is coming into picture, right? And we want every individual, right, even within the tech space, to act like a business owner, because only then that ownership and accountability kicks in, right? So and for tech teams specifically, if I have to ask about, it's like, for example, while looking at business outcome, we also look at, say, production defects, quality issues, right? The failure rate, those are all a part of the whole larger ecosystem. But one more element I would like to call out is the cross-functional ownership, right? So now whether it's the product team, it's the engineering team, it's the design team, right? So how do you collaborate and probably achieve that common outcome or the common goal is also becoming equally important, right? So there's no longer you can work in silos and say this is my remit. I think cross-functional exposure and cross-functional collaboration is equally important for any organization to achieve the desired outcome, right? Because all these teams I spoke about, I think they all are interdependent on each other, right? And one failure in one team will have a trickle effect or ripple effect on the other teams, right? So people need to start understanding that. And which is where, in my experience, we are kind of focusing on educating our employees and probably also bringing in these elements as a part of the assessment or the performance metrics, which we kind of call about, right? And you have to come up with those career frameworks to help them understand, and probably also this also helps you in retaining people, because once you get cross-functional exposure, you also kind of can mobilize people depending on their interest level and their aspirations and their skill sets, right? So it's a two-way journey for me. One, obviously they're becoming more productive, but at the same time also kind of able to retain talent on those aspects. So I think that's what it is, and in this, I think it's a partnership between business and HR. But as an HR leader, I think the focus is moving from did you deliver to did you deliver, and that brought in customer value and business impact, right? So these are two aspects where we are now assessing our people in terms of the impact you're carrying on the job you're doing, right? And so it's more about not only about outputs, but it's also about the employee behaviors, which are also significantly changing. And I think it's all about what you deliver, but also about how you deliver, right? So these two things are interlinked, and I think that's how you drive a culture in the organization. So I think that's my 2 cents on this particular question, right? And while we don't create profitability directly, right, but then definitely we can create the performance culture and the performance architecture to drive that profitable behavior, right? So I'll take a pause there, and yeah.
Thank you so much, Abhinav. If I could request now Abhay to share his thoughts.
So thanks, Amit, for inviting me for discussion. Hope I am audible.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So this is very different topic than usual CHRO discussions which happens around, and uh, the focus on customer, like we follow the balance scorecard approach. So customer plays a very critical role in the performance of each and every individual in the organization, and it is the one of the key stakeholder in terms of driving the organization performance and effectiveness throughout the year. Now, having customer lifetime value as one of the parameter, particularly from the kind of long-term relationship which we maintain with the customer, and how do we deal with it, and how the customer relationship is creating a role in the success of an organization, and creating it as a performance parameter for each and every individual whosoever is linked to the customer in terms of delivery, in terms of performance, in terms of satisfaction, quality, long-term relationship, branding. So these parameters are very critical part of the overall performance measurement within the balance scorecard framework, and has been taken care right from the individual goal setting, their performance link incentives, everything to the final delivery and sustainable growth of the organization and business and product and customer relationship. So I think the focus which people need to put on these aspects, that long-term relationship and customer lifetime value, I think that is very critical from the organization success point of view, and is being taken care throughout the organization in all the businesses. So these are my some inputs which so far I have seen and we have been practicing.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you, Abhay. If I could now request Ankush to share his thoughts.
So I think Abhinav and Abhay made quite pertinent and relevant things. So I'll just add on to what Amit was saying. So fundamentally, we are seeing a shift from the output or the activity-based metrics to more customer-linked matrix for designing of incentives or performance or variable pays. So earlier, traditionally, if you look at tech was more on their internal metrics, like the quality of code, sprint velocity, the feature rollout, test case coverage, and those kind of parameters were, system uptime, those kind of parameters were used largely to evaluate a tech team's performance, whether it is engineering or, product or data and so on and so forth. But now you are bringing in that customer angle. So you're basically making tech also accountable for certain customer impact. Things like adoption of features, things like, retention. If my customers stay on the platform or no, is my platform becoming more sticky courtesy tech, right? Am I able to retain more customers? What is my cost to serve to these customers using technology, right? And it is not just about the delivery only. It is not just about whether the project has been, completed. And Abhinav made a very pertinent last statement that it is not about what have you delivered. It is more about that how you have delivered. What impact does it create for customers? And when I look at the broader, tech organization, when you look at, you're the fintechs or, consumer tech organizations, it is not just the tech teams. Even your non-tech team, like your sales, they are also getting impacted by not just their own internal metrics. Like we are not worried only about top line today. We talk of, what is the margin discipline of the organization. The sales teams are incentivized not just on the top line. You're talking about what kind of revenue are we bringing in? What is the quality of revenue? What kind of customers are you bringing in? So if you look at the total change that we're looking at, I would say that at least in the last 4 or 5 organizations that I have been part of, largely been in the tech and consumer tech or the high growth tech firms, the top North Star metric for the organization itself has been centered around customers, right? It's like your productivity. Productivity remains the North Star metric for the entire organization. Whether you are in tech, whether you're in finance, whether you're in sales, doesn't matter. It is the North Star metric. Every function's goals, KPIs are aligned to move the needle on the employee productivity. Second aspect is that one of the most important features that any consumer-based organization, whether it is tech, is facing is you measure CSAT scores. At the end of everything, you deliver a customer satisfaction survey, and you get certain scores. Now that paradigm is also changing. It is not just about a simple CSAT score. You are taking into account what is the churn of my customers, at what stage my customers are churning. What stage am I able to bring back those customers, right? And what is my customer base expansion? Now, it may have a tech flavor. I've seen tech teams taking ownership of customer churn. At the end of the day, if I'm a tech firm and I'm not able to retain my customers on my platform, and so something is missing. So it is not just that we've delivered this feature, but is that feature appropriate enough to attract more customers? Or is that feature apt enough to make sure that my customers stay back with me? right? So we are making tech teams accountable for that, right? Coming to the last point, very specifically, when you design incentive schemes, right? Uh, Earlier, it used to be a very simple, plain vanilla. You have matrix, you pay out depending upon the scale, performance. You bring in individual performance or your function performance, right? Now you're looking at something which at least I have used, is something called the deferred bonuses. I will wait for the needle to move. I will wait for my retention numbers to come in. I will wait for my expansion numbers to come in. It is not just about you've delivered this feature, you get the bonus part, right? So similarly for performance bonus, for variable bonuses, right? We are looking at a deferred thing, making people more accountable for the real impact that is created in the customer world, not just limited to the tech space, right? So that's how sales incentives, your tech incentives are structured, bringing in more customer alignment, bringing tech and product teams closer to what customer impact can be. So a tech team, a software engineer should also know that, if he's working on a project or if he's working on a feature building aspect, what value is he adding to the organization? So that from a HR point of view serves me two purposes. One, makes it very clear to the tech team that where do they fit in the overall scheme of things? Is it only about writing codes and delivering features? Answer is no. Where are you adding the customer value? Are you helping the organization get more customers? Are you helping the organizations to retain more customers? Are you preventing churn? Are you making customers more self-reliant so that they don't add on to your operational costs? Those are the things that we are now forcing the tech teams to introspect, and they're incentivized on this. So these are some of my thoughts, Amit.
Very nice. Very, very good thoughts, Ankush. And if I could now request Dr. Brilliant to share his thoughts, please.
विडंबना है पार्थ, इंसेंटिव्स दो तो तकलीफ, कंडीशंस टाइट करो तो और तकलीफ, करे तो क्या करे. So let's call spade a spade, Amit and others who have tuned in. I must admit that all through the years that I've been in corporate, I've seen that incentive plans are completely disassociated from the overall business unit economics. Right? For example, I think Ankush also spoke about it, is when engineering gets a bonus, it's for pushing code on time, making one feature accessible. Sales gets an incentive for, in our business, it's like enrollment. And then there are teams like, let's say, student success and marketing, which is left holding the bag when there is a dropout few months later. Right? And they cannot just claim that हम तो फकीर आदमी है झोला लेके चलेंगे. ये problem है. We have to understand that in the good old days, it was okay to look at a short term, right? Because we needed to get there. But today, times have changed, mechanics have changed, the dynamics have changed. So you have to think long term, and there is no other excuse. So incentives should now start looking at focusing from a long-term perspective, and many of which Ankush has already shared. So I'll not repeat it, but I'll bring it in a fashion where we have looked at it. So, we cannot operate in a model where saying that operation successful but patient dead. We need to think of tech, every function, right? Tech, marketing, HR also, to move from being a support function to being an enabler. We've long been closeted as a support function, saying कि यार तुम तो कुछ ही नहीं कर सकते. But having worked with the tech teams for a long time, I can tell you, they are the ones which can actually make or break. Today, it's all about a tech-driven organizations. We've heard this. So tech is leading everything. And if I have to look at protecting the tech margins and to drive the LTVs, the lifetime value for the customers, I think it starts with HR also, where you need to start revisiting the way in which incentives, your variable pay is looked at, from immediate simple output based to at least linking it to maybe customer retention, the quality of margins, and the way in which the entire business is said. Unfortunately, what we have seen is HR hardly speaks the business language. right? Business says कि incentive चाहिए, बोलते हैं हाँ ठीक है ये बना लेते हैं, this is the framework, this is it. They don't get into understanding the nuts and bolts. And I encourage everyone who's in HR to at least attend a few business reviews to get a sense of what it really means. In the good old days, no one was focused on LTV. LTV का full form भी नहीं मालूम था. I used to assume it used to be a television. कोई नया टीवी आया है. But till the time you get into that business meeting to understand why LTV is critical and how important it is to your organization and cause, nothing will move. And with AI coming in, the need to engage just beyond one interaction is critical. Thankfully, way back in 2016, our organization probably had the foresight. I would just take a sense of pride in sharing that we came up with a value called as enduring engagement. It's not just engagement, but enduring engagement. We are in the business of education, and for us, a learner who comes in at a stage when they are looking for a job to a time when they look for a CXO kind of a role, I have opportunities to service them all. Until and unless I build that entire ecosystem, enduring engagement will not work. And that's in a sense LTV translated in HR terminology as enduring engagement. And today I'm very happy and proud to share that marketing always used to get the blame, saying, "Ki, yaar, what are you doing about it?" Today, the tech team is also made responsible and accountable for the funnel management, saying, "कि तुम्हारा tech कैसे support कर रहा है? What are you doing? What are you doing to hold on? How are you getting the metrics right? How are you making sure that the form fill rates are higher?" Right? We have experimented in our ecosystem with both product and tech incentives and variable pay, from just operating as a feature delivery date or saying कि ये release कर दिया, to focusing on impact on revenue growth. And I remember that conversation when the tech team said, "We are not responsible for revenue, sales ने नहीं किया तो." Partner them, co-create, right? It's our business. And that's when everyone started changing and having a different conversation. So focusing on revenue growth, cost rationalization as the North Star metrics. And in engineering, it's okay to create a amazing tech stack driven service that is amazing, but it has a 30% jump on your, let's say, AWS cost. What it does is it eats up your profitability, your margins. No one wins. The business is not really happy. On the flip side, you have to think about it. How do I make sure that I optimize everything? So it's no longer a business which is focused on sales, but also on tech, putting up their brains, working closely, creating features that reduces the churn. And I think Ankush has mentioned that how do I make sure that I avoid that kind of a drops? And this directly relates to their performances and it's monitored. So that rating goes towards their variable pays and incentives. And I think more than anything else, it's high time we start driving this as a core for technology teams and educate everyone across the organization, not just tech, that their incentives, variable pay, even for the matter increments, should be linked to bringing in these customer longevity or LTV that we call as cost efficiency, and not just saying कि 100% tickets completed, 99.99 uptime achieved. These are all in the good old days जो बोलते थे ना मैट्रिक्स में सबसे lowest. It's no longer an expectation today. So we need to help enable them to move from operating as vendors to operating as owners of the P&L. And that's the most important element for me. Margin is no longer just a finance perspective. It is tech, it is marketing, and even HR who needs to participate. And it starts with making sure that you understand the business first and take action. Back to you, Amit.
Very pertinent points, Dr. Brillian. And if I could now invite Oves to share his views on
Yeah, it's very difficult to come in last and add because all these guys have aptly, pointed out to every possible reason that is there and the rationale. The only thing I will like to add is that, especially having worked in tech ecosystem for last 10 years, uh, it started with the companies focusing on growth only approach. And that's how all these functions got accustomed and the incentive plans and performance plans were put in place. Two, it has moved to now focusing on revenue and profitability. I think LTV is still a distant concept. It will eventually come in because of the disruption that is happening and the competition that is coming in. And again, another point I would like to put in is that it's very strange. Earlier, the companies used to have long term visibility on the growth prospect and the plans, and the incentives used to be very short term, like then and there you deliver and you get it. Now, the future growth prospect and plans can't be guaranteed. You need to pivot every now and then, and the incentives are getting long termish. And coming to Ankush's point, where he referred to deferred incentives, our approach that I have seen is that it's been very simple in the last couple of years, that as a business you plan for something, you have roadmap, you have details to it, and you have a target of hitting a X number. And if you do that X number, then only a Y kind of a kitty gets created for the team to be paid out. If you don't hit the X number, you don't get that kitty at all. It's as simple and as plain. And what that leads to is it leads to autonomous collaboration. It also needs to teams raising issues in time so that we are able to address and move with the pace and achieve targets. And that payout also gets deferred, as Ankush referred, over a period of time. It's not like you hit something by March next year and you get it in April. No, that will be spread out over the next 12 to 18 to 20 months. Of course, the amounts are also not minuscule. I mean, it should, you need to balance it out with the expectation of the team members. It can't be a very minuscule amount, but it has to be deferred and it has to be spread out over a period of time. Apart from that, I think we need to be constantly having a look at it. What worked last year may not work this year, with AI getting better at things. And as Brillian also referred, that the challenge we are facing right now is that how much AI do you want to use, because you also need to manage the bill, right? You have these token system and the bill can go through the roof. So all these things need to be put in place and looked at it holistically, and then move ahead and keep experimenting and bringing in new things to the incentive plans and the performance. But yeah, it has definitely moved from I have done my job to have we hit the target. That is surely clearly out there, which is coming out in all the conversations that we have had. In fact, this conversation that we are having right now is a testament of that only. So that's about it. I think all these guys have already added a lot of varied points. So
Thank you. Thank you. So one thing which is coming out very strongly is that HR is playing an active role in educating all the departments to think about profitability, to think about LTV and customer engagement. We talked about educating employees, scorecards, productivity, tech team productivity, enduring engagement, pivoting on plans, not taking anything long term. So very relevant points being discussed. Now, moving on to the round two, and we were discussing with a few panelists before the session that how to use AI to educate or to make the younger team members more productive, how to make or how much to use AI, how to use AI or how much to use AI. So, the specific question that I would like to put forward to all the panelists is that how are you embedding generative AI into developer and product workflows to accelerate deployment, and how are you compressing the timeline to make junior talent project ready? So if I could start with Ovesh, this time you are the
yeah.
number one. Ovesh, so please could you share
So
your
thanks a lot. So see, as I referred to in the last conversation which I just had, you need to play a balancing act. Majorly, I would say honestly, putting it out that whatever AI we have used up till now is, especially in tech product design, is majorly to manage boilerplate stuff, generic coding, checks and all, right? It has not moved to generative AI yet. Partly it will have to do with the kind of business we are in. Like I have been in fintech, so you need to think twice before you deploy any such technology because of the regulations. But it has definitely taken out a lot of time which used to get into doing basic routine stuff to actually doing more system design to basically break down more complex problems that are out there and just run with it, right? So that has definitely happened, and to the point that new kids coming on the block, I can tell you nowadays, whosoever you get from any campus, right, they're already one or two projects into it, so they know a lot of stuff about prompt engineering and stuff like that, and they already know quite a few tools like Claude or ChatGPT. They've already tested those tools and have some experience. What you need to do, what we do as a company, is basically to just get them into the user queries, right? That is like the starting point, because the moment you start looking at the user queries, you start understanding the product nuances, you start understanding the kind of workflows that exists in the app or in the product outside, and how is it that we are playing that role. And as they go through that for the first 2-3 months, eventually they build that understanding. And obviously with AI, what is happening is, rather than going to a manager for everything, they only go to the manager for a more complex kind of a challenge that they face. Otherwise they are able to handle it all on their own. And I mean, you talked about generative AI. I think the most critical stuff in generative AI is data that you give, right? And that is proprietary to every company. Now, if you have a very rich data, you can really play out, very unique use cases and utilize it better. Like we had done for customer experience. Our customer experience is almost 80-90% automated, and the remaining ones are usually complex and escalation queries, which the team then can focus on more and close it faster. So overall it is leading to better customer experience and faster resolutions, which eventually will link to the long term value for the employee, for the customer, and help us retain more and more users. So that's about it. I think generative AI is still a step to cross, but we are at least the operational stuff, a lot of basic stuff has been taken care of with I would say a lesser number of people handling more things nowadays. So that's already happening for sure.
Very nice. Thanks always. If I could request Dr. Brilliant to share his thoughts, please.
Thank you, Amit, and rightly put by always. It's easy today to just give a laptop to a fresher and tell them, "Chalo yaar, coding kar lo." But reality is that's not the efficient way. It's simple as saying, "Ki yaar, everything is available. Why would I need someone to do that?" Uh, we were talking just before the panel started, Amit, like the traditional 6 month bench training model is dead. मेरे टाइम नहीं है मेरे पास भाई. If I am the tech person, I would say the moment I give you an offer, you should start delivering. But reality is we still expect them to have some learning curve because they need to understand the domain, they need to get at par with what we want to achieve. And over a period of time, what I've seen is the onboarding time, especially from a junior or a fresh talent perspective, has dropped down from 6 months to 3 months to 1 month to now almost about 15 days. All across organizations, and I think it's become more of a buzzword, is every organization wants to call itself AI first. And thanks always for talking about it. The cost of tokens are important, right? There was recently an advisory by a tech giant asking their employees to refrain from using AI for basic stuff. That itself is a red flag for everyone here and for those who are entering the job markets. The reason is it sends a message that you stop thinking, boss.
Right.
And from an organization perspective, I can tell you how we have leveraged generative AI. We have started building those into our developer workflows, into our content teams, everywhere that tech is used. Now, I'll give a great example of how vibe coding has helped HR itself. We used to have a performance management system. We tried customizing SAP, we tried looking at off-the-shelf products, but the cost was too high. And end of it, whatever we tried, we had to bring it down to an Excel sheet and start manipulating data to get what we wanted. So then we came up with an idea to run a hackathon internally and put this as a project for the hackathon. And one of the teams started working on it. We used vibe coding, we worked on it, we fine-tuned it, and today, as we speak, The performance management system is an outcome of a vibe coding. And I'm very happy and proud to say that I did not have to set up a very large team. I just needed one person who could review what is being generated by the vibe coding, put it in perspective, one person to do the quality check, and one from HR to do the testing, rigorous testing, and that's it. Today, I think what we need to look at is AI always has that requirement to have a human to validate what is throwing. That will not go away. But developers need to be trained, and I'm saying this from a, let's say, fresh talent perspective or junior talent perspective, that they need to understand that AI tools are non-negotiable. It will exist and it has to coexist. तो बोलते हैं ना एआई से डर नहीं लगता जिसको एआई नहीं आता उससे डर लगता है that's the scenario today for all of us and what we do is instead of looking at saying कि यार तुम कोड जनरेट करो I remember even there is a AI hack for people who wanted to crack interviews by typing codes the जुगाड़ निकाल लेते हैं but what we wanted to look at is move from the standards and evaluate on maybe a code review. Can they really create a prompt which is contextual in nature? Prompt engineering is amazing, right? All of us on the screen today, if we are asked to write a prompt, all of us will get different responses basis what kind of a prompt we build in. And that's where contextual programming and prompting is important. And most important is no company would want to wait for a long period before we start delivering. Use of AI is inevitable. And we have a lot of integrations with multiple tools. For example, as a learning ecosystem, we need a video conferencing facility. So we have Zoom. We need a student payment ecosystem. So we have interactions with CC Avenue, for example. And then we have an entire learning management system. Now, multiple different functionalities working together, it's not easy, right? So you need to start looking at how do I revisit the way in which we work and create an entire ecosystem where a person doesn't need to move out of that. They are in here. It's all based on a single sign-on. We've all seen that it has its pros and cons, but still it's very useful because you know what is happening. And today, I'm very happy to share that thanks to the use of generative AI supporting tools that exist in the market, we've been able to bring down some content production and review time from about 3 weeks to about 4 hours. Now, just look at the kind of efforts it has saved, the headcount it has saved. It is opening up opportunities, right? And especially what we have seen is the junior developers in the organization, they are given the job of reviewing codes, looking at whether the AI generated code is fit enough, and the junior person can step up as maybe a solution architect, maybe as a super boss of that person and say, chalo, isko aage kar do. Outcomes, faster sprints. We have zero bench count today. And most important, people who join at the junior level, they feel more useful than before because the probation, so-called, or the bench period no longer exists. It's like almost wiped off. Back to you, Amit.
Thank you, Dr. Brillian. So in case at the end of the session we have some time, I would like to ask some questions about the internet hacking that we used. Very interesting. So, but now if I could request Ankush to share his thoughts, please.
So I think, as the previous speakers mentioned, AI is something which probably I think is a reality now. We can't shy away from it. We can't run away from it. But I think the crux of the matter today is that where do you kind of, or rather, how do you strike a balance between usage of AI, the cost associated with it, and I'll take it one step ahead. There are some pertinent risks also associated with it, and we've seen it in the news a couple of times that some glitches have been rolled out and there have been mass disruptions. So I think the fundamental shift with AI that we are seeing today is that it's not about what problem are you solving today. It is rather more in terms of, are you able to describe the problem correctly for the AI to solve or the tool to solve, right? And that's where, like OS has also mentioned something about the prompt engineering. Are you good at describing the problem in an appropriate manner, in a right context so that you get the right answers? Having said that, generative AI being embedded into the tech workflows, I would say it's not just a matter of tools. It is now become a mindset. It is your way of working. That's how you are going to work. And with passage of time, AI is going to be more and more relevant to, the way, especially the tech teams are working. Now, coming very specifically to the entry level, developers or the techies that we are onboarding today, while they come with a lot of, knowledge and updates on the AI tools, I think one thing that we have been doing is that, you don't train them anymore. So it's like real sense on the job. You put them on the sprints very quickly, right? You don't wait for like a month or two to give them guidance about, these are a tech stack and, this is how we work, basic orientation done, and then you are actually on the job. So we've seen developers writing code with Copilot, they're extending it to the test cases, how vast the test case coverage is. Even simple tasks like documentation, even debugging is being done with the use of AI. So it's, and that's where I was saying that, when you start doing everything with AI, there will be certain cost and risk associated. So somewhere the organizations have to, strike a balance. Another thing with AI coming in it, and it is not just the junior people that we're talking about. If we get, like Dr. Brillian mentioned, that you can create systems, your junior guys are more productive, that leads a lot of bandwidth with my senior tech folks, that I can utilize their bandwidth in not so transactional or trivial tasks. I can use their bandwidth for more oversight, for more compliance, for being the guardrail, the maker and checker concept, right? They can do more productive reviews. They can think about more architectural things, more design things rather than coding. Like in my experience with most of the tech firms is that, the senior folks, you become a principal engineer, you become a solution architect, you still are involved in some bit of coding, which in a way is good because people like to stay relevant. But I would not like to see that my solution architect is spending most of his time writing a piece of code. He's graduated past that. I would like him to be kind of a oversight person who kind of oversees everything, what is happening, what is being delivered, and bring in more relevant value pertaining to his role. So these are some of the thoughts. Basically, what we are doing is that and I have seen that, prior to AI, when we used to measure that when a junior developer is going to be productive for us, it was somewhere in the months. I mean, like I would say roughly around 3 months when an actual developer used to be absolutely productive for us. With AI, with generative AI mindset coming in, I think this time frame has been cut short. Right? It may vary from an organization to organization, but we have seen it just really come down to now maybe 2 to 3 weeks, max 1 month. So there is a significant reduction in getting more productivity out of people. And that's where, if we talk to the first, related to the first round, that how people are becoming more productive, people, when employee productivity is the North Star for the metric. So this is how probably the organizations are also drawing benefit out of it. But with a caution, I would like to say that, there has to be a very pertinent check on the cost balance that you achieve and the risk associated with the organization. Because, when you're leaving everything to AI, the risk, the impact, especially if you're in a customer facing, or, like OS mentioned that he's part of fintech, I'm sure he understands, the financial data, the compliance is part of it, right? When they get breached, right? We can't put the blame on AI, right? It has the organization suffer. So somewhere there has to be guardrails around compliances, data security, what we are churning out, the cost associated. Otherwise, AI is a very, very welcome, very, very productive, disruption for all of us.
Thank you. Very pertinent points, Ankush. So if I could now request Abhinav to share his thoughts, please.
Sure, Amit. So I think great insights, and I completely agree with Ove's and Ankush on a couple of points which they spoke. And I come from financial services, so I know the risk, Ankush, you were talking about in terms of uses of AI, right? And because we deal with people's money day in and day out, right? So and we have invested heavily on AI, but then we are also very conservative when it comes to the actual usage of AI on those production sites, right? So the question typically I ask my technology heads is that, okay, while it's good to say that, okay, we have say hundreds or thousands of code designed with the help of AI, right? But how many of them have actually gone into production? That is my true proof of pudding, and that is my true ROI, right? And the answer is very few. We are still very far and few, at least in our industry, to say that, okay, this is what has had a huge impact on our business, right, or on PNL because of AI. Because in our business, one small error can cost us a bomb, right? And it's millions of dollars we're talking about. So, which is where, yes, we are definitely kind of investing and looking at AI as the next big thing, but then we have to also be very careful about the risk and control aspect and ensuring that we to Ankush's point, we work within the defined guardrails, right, and don't try to over experiment, right? Now coming back to the question, asked, I would rather try to rephrase that question in a way which is like how we do redesign work with the adoption of AI, right? That's how I see this question more relevant. And I think the way I see this is that AI is definitely something you can't shy away from, right? That's a great tool and you need to focus on. But I think the shift has happened from and I'll start from the gating entry gate, right? Hiring. The shift has shifted. The shift has moved. The needle has moved from hiring for knowledge to hiring for skills, right? And I think there's a big debate happening in the industry about job versus skills, right? So and when I say skills, it's more about the learning agility of the individual, that how quickly you adopt the usage of AI, how quickly you learn and probably be flexible and probably adapt to the new way of working, and which comes with the adoption of AI, right? So I think that is something which in our industry and in my company at least we are looking at right now, that how much learning agility do you have both with the new hires as well as the internal employees, right? And which is where our job comes into picture in terms of creating that whole ecosystem to provide continuous learning, upskilling people for the future, right? And ensuring that while we have all these fancy tools, right, do we have the right workforce to even utilize that and use them, right? So that becomes very important, right? So while technical competency and technical skills will continue to evolve, but we need to also have the ability to learn, adopt, and collaborate with AI becoming a core. Right now, the second shift is we are seeing, and I think Ankush spoke about the shortening of the onboarding or productivity for the new hires. And I completely agree that yes, the campus hires are way too smart. Like you go to IITs and you will get some really top-notch people who know much more than even your tenured people in the organization, right? So for them, adopting is much easier. But I think what we have done is that we have shortened our onboarding program by embedding AI into our new hire learning journey, right? So which has helped us reduce that 6 months or 9 month period to say a max 2 months, 3 months period to for somebody to be really productive, right? And with we also now focusing on giving real life scenarios to our new hires to make sure that they work on real problems. They use AI to kind of generate codes, documentation, but at the same time, they know that these are real life, real time business problems, and how they can kind of solve those for us, right? So that is one aspect of helping them come up the curve pretty fast. I think the other aspect with the usage of AI comes in, and I think somebody spoke about it, was the manager population, right? I think until now, manager was somebody who has to review the work and probably ensure that things are falling in place. But now with the adoption of AI, right, the routine work will obviously go away, right? And I think managers have to start investing in two aspects. One, obviously, utilizing your resources in much better way and utilizing their bandwidth to the most efficient manner. But two, they also need to kind of now start focusing on coaching and developing your workforce and helping them develop the, I think one thing which AI can't replace is human judgment and critical thinking. That's my personal view, and I think it's manager's job now to kind of start focusing and developing those skill sets or those capabilities in our workforce to ensure that we have a fine balance of usage of AI, but at the same time also not replacing human brains with AI completely, right? So that's and also the last aspect is what do you say, the responsible usage of AI, right? And with the new workforce, I have seen so many times, right, that they stop using their brains, right, and then they only rely on AI, right? I mean, I have people in my team, even an HR team, right? I ask them to create a presentation, and I can see everything is right from scratch, designed through AI, right? So where is your brain, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we are human resources, right? So our brain is our USP, right? So which is where I see a risk of people being over dependent and over reliant on AI and not utilizing their own judgment to get the outcome, which will not help them in the long run, right? So I'm looking from that perspective in terms of skill building, capability building, along with the usage of AI, right? So yes, adoption, and for me this whole AI adoption is also a big change management program for me, right? And it's a transformation, right? All of us are going through a transformation journey with the adoption of AI, and any transformation journey requires a strong change management. And you would agree that you can have the best of the best strategy, but if you don't have the foolproof change management program, then things fall flat. And which is where I think it's more about adopting AI, having a foolproof change management program, and HR becomes a very important element in that, in terms of building that ecosystem, building that architecture, and helping employees come up the curve by upskilling them for and make them future ready. So I think these are few data points which I thought I'll share, and I think I'll probably close it by saying that it's not about what you're adopting, it's about how you transform your workforce capability to make them, somebody said, right, that uh, knowing AI is not a problem, but AI is not going to replace your job, but somebody who's not knowing AI may have a problem, right? So, which is where our job comes into picture in terms of ensuring that you have the right workforce who understands that and probably take it ahead. Yeah. So those are a few thoughts from my end.
Thank you, Abhinav. Now, if I could request Abhay to share his thoughts on this. You're on mute, Abhay.
Yeah. So, uh, uh, this of
I think some connectivity issues, Abhay, at your end. We can't hear you properly.
uh, to damage
You can
the
switch your camera off and
delivery out
speaking. Maybe it's the
your
bandwidth.
AI adoption and the talent acceleration for the junior and multiple
Yeah,
not
better.
sure where it is, but are you not properly?
I think it's slightly better, but still there
Not
is some
sure.
connectivity problem.
Is it? Yeah. So allocate your time for. So you may continue like try to act. Yeah. You may continue your
Sure,
discussion.
sure.
We can join.
No worries, no worries. All right, so let's
Sorry.
move on to the third round. There is some connectivity issue at Abhay's end. So the third and final round, and this round is more on how is HR helping foster a culture of productivity, especially in the engineering and tech teams. But before we move on to the third round, if I could request everyone, all the participants, to please switch on your camera for a screenshot for the records, for our records. So if a humble request to all the participants to please switch on your camera just for a minute so that we can take a snapshot for our records. Just for a minute, in case the internet connectivity allows. Thank you. Thank you. Some more, please, so that we can take a screenshot. Thank you. Just a few more, if possible. Yes, thank you. So nice of you. Thank you so much. So now, before moving on to the third round on how HR is helping foster that culture of productivity, there is a box that we have to tick, that we have to speak about Kushalta for a, for a couple of minutes. I won't take more than 2 minutes. So Kushalta, we are into HR manpower services, the whole gamut of HR manpower services. We are into training, where we do the training of top leadership, CXO level. We are into sales leadership training. We are into AI training. Apart from training, we provide manpower solutions, all the hirings at the from entry level to CXO level. We are into group health solutions. We are also into outbounds and offsites, and we have executive education solutions with us, and also into HRMS, LMS solutions, and CSR. So in case any one of you has any such requirement, you can connect with us. Now, moving on to the third round, having that box ticked, moving on to the third and final round, the specific question that I would like to ask all the panelists is that to foster that culture of productivity, or how do you foster a true product-led culture that transitions engineering teams into autonomous metric moving pods rather than simple feature factories? So if I could start with Dr. Brillian for this round.
Thanks, Amit. And while many organizations love to call them as product organizations, but the tech teams don't really operate as product teams. They operate as individual teams working in silos. And as you rightly said, it's more moving towards the feature factory, saying that I am an engineering department. Today, let's look at how life is, right? Today, if I am a function or a business, I'll send out a wish list. Someone in the team, maybe a business analyst, will work on creating a BRD, a business requirement document, and the engineering will start building on it. And over the period of time, what I have seen, these teams just say कि ये हो गया, ये हो गया, ये हो गया, ये हो गया, यानी कि एक चेकलिस्ट है जो सब चेक हो गया, my job is done. And I think this is where the problem is, and therefore the opportunity for all tech teams and especially people in HR also to revisit the way the teams are operating. While yes, it's very difficult to have too many teams having multiple skill sets. We need to start looking at the pod culture, and you rightly said that if I have to build that true product-led culture, we need to break it as a typical factory line, जो assembly line होता था कि ये सिर्फ पेंटिंग करेगा, ये सिर्फ डेंटिंग करेगा, ये सिर्फ चक्का लगाएगा. We need to move away from that and start looking at cross-functional engagement. We need to create small pods. Don't worry about it. And most important is, instead of looking at outcomes, think about what is the business or the function North Star metric that you're driving. And it's not a delivery list. Checklist to hote rahega. That's a part of your sprint. It's a part of what you need to do to achieve the end business goal. For us, we've said it very clear that tech teams, through your interventions in 1, 2, 3 products that we want to build, these are the revenue drivers, which means growth in revenue that we should see. And as I mentioned earlier, there was a reluctance because they would say, I don't have a control on the sales team, I don't have a control on the marketing. And that is where the interaction, the engagement, and the connections started off, where we said that, okay, start asking business functions. Don't look at what North Star metrics means to you. Ask the business, ki, what is that North Star metric, and how I, as a function, can help you reach there. Before you begin your work, what happens is काम शुरू कर देते हैं, and then when something happens, they say, यार ये तो बताया ही नहीं. Now this helps that our focus is aligned to the business, and of course, going back to what we said earlier, is the long-term value. See, no one wants to create a system which is just trashed out in less than a year or 2 years or 3 years. They want something which is long-term sustaining. And I would say even the language in which we talk should change. Even if you create a pod, instead of just telling them that ये feature बना के दे दो मेरे को, आई हैव टू टेल देम भाई मेरा प्रॉब्लम ये है कि फॉर्म फिल रेट्स मेरे इतने कम हो गए हैं. मेरे जो स्टूडेंट्स, मेरे लर्नर्स, those who come to the website, they are not finding what they are looking for. How do I change that? How do I ensure that the form fill rates which are dropping moves to, let's say, from whatever it is to about 10%, right? How can I keep the website loading time at a particular level? Because what happens is today the generation is very restless.
Correct.
Giving an example of what's happening across the country today, and we've seen how Gen Zs have literally used AI to create memes, to think about, reels at a time when there is something really difficult that they are fighting for. They are using technology in the most effective manner. They are not looking at a checklist. They are saying that ye problem hai, how do I solve it, and what are the options that are available for me? And how you do it is up to you. But I will tell you what I am looking for. And ideally, a pod should look at not just the product, the engineering, the QA, the data analytics, but I will also add an HR element to it, because the dynamics that happen within that group is also critical, right? There are instances where you and I may disagree, Amit. I mean, there are elements where you have a strong opinion on, and I am completely against it. But that should not stop work from, getting affected. And that's where probably having an HR business partner as a part of some of the review meetings, some of the sprints will really help. And it needs to be owned by the entire team. It's not one person's responsibility. If you want to see magic, you will have to look at that North Star metrics. My boss, ex-boss now, he always used to say that fail. It's important to fail, but fail fast. You cannot fail and wait on it for a very long time, because the cost of failure should not hit the business. And that is where true realization comes in for teams, saying that it's okay. Sometimes your ideas may completely flop. That's perfectly fine. But move on from there. Don't get stuck कि यार अभी इसको मैं ठीक करके ही रहूंगा. It will not happen. Revisit that PDCH cycle, which we've heard of in the good old days of software development: plan, do, check, and act. That cycle is so frequent today. It's no longer just restricted to a quarter or a month. It is as and when certain features or certain elements of that product is getting delivered. So that cycle is getting reduced, and it is not the responsibility of the senior leadership or the senior people in the team. It's everyone, right from the junior developer to the solution architect to even the tech head. So I think one aspect that we need to look at is, don't get into the focus of micromanaging. Yes, Jira boards are important. We know that it's absolutely non-negotiable, because that gives a sense of what it is, but give them clarity on the business objective. I think it was Ankush who mentioned, I don't recollect, that creating that guardrails is important, right? And if you really want to showcase value, you should be that Amitabh Bachchan saying, हम जहाँ खड़े होते हैं लाइन वहीं से शुरू होती है. Give them autonomy, give them metrics, give them ownership, and make them accountable. And I'll tell you that they will set benchmarks which we will be very, very happy about. And it will no longer be just about what we write, but about what we experience. So moving from a culture which is feature based to thinking from a product cycle, all of these needs to be incorporated. Back to you, Amit.
Very important points, Dr. Brillian. If I could request Ankush to share his point of view on this.
Okay. So I'll slightly differ from what Dr. Brillian mentioned. So first, I'll give a very real life example. This is the problem that I solved in the last organization I worked in. So we stopped calling them pods, right? Because pods historically were like small teams coming together, solving a problem, and then getting disbanded, right? People work on different problems, and so we started calling them clans or tribes. And the whole idea was that these guys stick around for a longer period of time. And you just empower them, make them accountable for business metrics, not just a tech metrics. So the problem that they're going to solve is somebody solving a supply chain problem. He has to move the needle on my supply chain network metrics, whether it is fulfillment rate or order efficiency or whatever it is, right? And we ensured that these teams stuck around for minimum of 9 months. So we created a tribe of supply chain team, and they were the ones who were looking forward for all the problems in supply chain, right? And where I differ from Dr. Brillian is that shared accountability has never worked. So we had to pick one amongst the equals in this tribe to be the complete owner of whatever goes out of this as a deliverable, whether it is a feature, whether it is a rollout, or whatever it is that this team is delivering. One other change that we brought in that, while this pod or team will have an engineering representation, a product, a design, a data, infra guy, right? We also brought in somebody from the business. We made it mandatory for the business guy to be part of all sprint reviews, retro sprint meetings, and that generated two things for us. One, it was the problems that were picked up were as per the priority list of business as well as the tech team. So there was a mutual convergence. But what we had seen earlier is tech priorities will be different. Business wants everything done to on yesterday basis, and tech will work on their own priority list, right? So now with business guy embedded into this pod or clan or whatever name you want to call it right now, the priorities were mutually aligned. Tech will pick up something which business wants to do, and business is aligned on that. So that was one big change. Second change that we thought, we started linking the performance matrix, and the first section that we spoke about, Amit. This was the classical case for us where the performance of this entire pod or team was linked to business metrics. It was not about whether you delivered a feature. It was about whether the supply chain metric has moved or no. So your bonuses, your variable pay, your performance rating, everything was dependent on the business metrics. Third, like I said, has to be one person ownership. You make one person as the leader of the tribe or the captain of the team, right? Shared accountability, in our experience, at least in my experience, has never worked. Because shared accountability only comes into limelight when something is not done. Then you answer questions like, product ne PRD nahi likha, business se BRD nahi aaya, requirements were not clear, engineering will raise their hands that we didn't have bandwidth, I was solving problem for some other, my last pod, right? So we were always in a situation where that, things are not moving, but resources are getting consumed, bandwidths are getting consumed. So we ensured three things. One, this team or this working group has to stick around for a longer period of time. Make them accountable, responsible for driving business metrics. Have one among equal, one person take charge of everything. Embed the business guy into this workflow. And I will not hesitate in saying that with business guy taking part in the sprint meetings, in the sprint retros, right, made the most significant impact on the delivery speed. There was real-time feedback from the market that this is not what the market is expecting. This is what the market is looking for, right? So this actually allowed me to move that needle from that, did we ship the feature to something like, did the metric move? So these are the two fundamental questions that we were asking. Prior to this, it was like, have we rolled out this feature? Is the payment button enabled? Right? Now we were asking the question, has the metric moved in that business? Yeah. So back to you, Amit.
Very powerful point, Ankush. Now, we'll come back to having a discussion on this later, maybe after this round. Ovesh, if I could request you to share your views on this. You're on mute, Ovesh.
Sorry. So, again, we are trying to solve a problem which I feel was created by design. When tech things started way back from 2011, 12 onwards, when startups started to come into picture, it was all about features. And that's how the engineers, product guys, designers are conditioned, who are now maybe CTOs, CXOs at any leading startup, right? To moving them to pods. Pods did, as Brillian and Ankush highlighted, they really solved a lot of challenges that we used to face, and putting a business guy in and putting a metric also, which is linked to business, did help move the needle. But as HR guy who has been part of such pod discussions, the basic intrinsic nature of a tech, of a product, of a design, of a data guy will keep coming back, right? And they will keep debating, they will keep not agreeing to a lot of stuff. Now in that, even at times the business guys, they get lost because they don't understand the nuances of a tech guy or a coding nuances, or they don't know the design nuances. So you need to go by what the person is saying, right? Eventually. So what we did differently was we had a pod lead who was either a product guy or a tech guy or a design guy. More so tech or product, very less in very few cases where the product or the feature they were working on was a design heavy thing. We had a design guy, but we never had a business guy taking the shots. It was like giving accountability to those product or tech leads to take a call, which really helped in reducing those that resistance and helped us move things faster, because what we experienced was the business guy was struggling to understand nuances, because he was a business guy, right? Unless and until you have someone who is a tech guy transition into a business, then you can have, then that will be a very different game, right? Another thing that is there is that, again, see, if you, and that's how incentive structures have moved, which we discussed initially, that if you link everything to business outcomes and you have a larger kitty and a delayed payout, right? Eventually things will start to work for a larger extent. I'm sure challenges would still be there, but we have seen that suddenly, people are tracking business metrics. They are asking difficult questions about the business viability. They are tracking the competition. Earlier, nobody used to even look at what the competition is doing. They just were concerned about their own stuff. Okay, I have delivered this. We have achieved this. What is in it for me? Now they are keeping an eye on competition. Who is doing what? Uh, how much numbers are they getting in? And what is it that they are losing ground on? So all those things, I think eventually the core is obviously good work that you gave, or the problem that you're trying to solve as a business. And second is what's in it for me. If you are able to address these two things together, I think a lot of stuff gets addressed and has been addressed to a large extent, at least in the organizations that I have been part of. But yes, challenges keep evolving. Pod is something which has worked in the past, but again, now what is happening is with AI, a good engineer or a techie who has some experience of working with designers and all can actually be a pod in himself with the use of AI agents. Like that's the next phase we are moving to in next 4, 5, 6 years. I don't know the timeline, but that's where we will lead to. It also comes to someone who was an HRBP with no experience in talent acquisition or CNB. You can actually deploy AI agents, and with some experience that you have, and if you read around and you build that skill, you can actually manage the show, right? So that is another aspect which is really picking up fast and coming into picture. For example, I'll tell you, QA used to be a very key function, but nowadays QA, with the help of AI, is being addressed very differently. So I think, yeah, I mean it has helped solve a lot of challenges, but there are a lot of things that keep coming up, and we need to keep innovating and trying out various things and keep moving. But eventually, fundamentally, there are two things. What are we trying to do as a business? Is that satisfying their self-esteem and their skills? And another thing is what's in it for me. If these two things are getting addressed, I think we're on the right course.
Very good point, sir.
That's it.
Yeah, thank you. If I could invite Abhinav to share his views on this, please.
Sure, Amit. So I think very valid points, and I can give an example of my firm. So we do have a pod model. So we have both pod and non-pod model, right? And I think the pod works very well for us, and we do have a business person in that pod, right? So the business outcome is kind of the core focus, right? And why it has helped us, because it's the so when you have the engineering teams, the business teams, all of them, the design team together, right? Then what we have seen and experienced is that the collaboration becomes natural than forced, right? You have no choice but to kind of collaborate with people, and everybody is then working towards one common goal and one common outcome. I think we spoke about it earlier as well. So it's no longer a activity based metric, but more of an outcome based metric. And the business owner in our case is the prime, has the prime ownership on the outcome, right? Because is the business person who's dealing with the clients on a regular basis, right? So what has worked for us, but in this case, I think where you have to also give some bit of liberty to these pods is that let them innovate, right? Let them take those risks. And I think Dr. Brillian mentioned about failing and failing fast. I think that's what we believe as well, that it's okay to fail and learn from failures and move on, right? So I think defining a guardrail, that this is the battleground within which you can do whatever you want to, right? So we do that. We define the risk and control aspect, saying you can't go out of these four boundaries, but then within those four walls or four boundaries, do whatever it takes for you to be entrepreneurial, take those risks and be innovative. And we reward innovation, right? So if that innovation is in the right direction, we also reward that. And when it talk about incentives, I think the way we have designed incentive is two ways. One, obviously, your individual performance, but then also how the pod has performed and have impacted the business outcome is also kind of responsible for a part of your incentive, so to say, or the performance bonus, right? So because that also then gives ownership to every individual, saying, okay, it's not only about me, but it's also about the entire pod and how we deliver as a team. Also equally important for us to get our respective incentives. So that has worked wonderfully for us. I think the role of an HR here is to create the right org model or the operating model and the org design to ensure that we provide the right ecosystem to those pods to operate. Because for me, a pod is a shop in itself, right? It's so we have so many pods, right? And we say the way you operate, it's that you're running your own business, you're running your own organization, and do what it takes for you and generate the business for us, right? And which is works for them. With the more what do you say, the more restrictions you impose, right, the less innovation will happen, and the outcome will also be equally impacted. So which is where I think pod has worked well for us in some cases, and in some cases obviously we are doing the regular run of the mill feature based thing, but in the long run we definitely emphasize on having more and more pods to ensure that they own it, right? And we believe in entrepreneurial skills, and you own it, you own the outcome, and even your incentives are also decided by how you perform, right? And how the entire pod has performed. So those are a few thoughts which has kind of worked for us in our favor. I think it's clearly about trust, accountability, clear business outcomes, and at the same time also providing them enough and more clarity about what is required to be achieved. I think that worked well for us.
Some very interesting points. Thank you, Abhinav. In fact, the entire discussion, some very, very interesting points came up. Before we do a summary of the meeting, if I could raise the questions which are asked in the chat box. So one is how costly from a time perspective, from a time point of view, how costly is conflict between AI and human? And is it a worth thinking about point? And how do we solve this? The conflict between AI and human. Anyone, any panelists who would like to take this?
I think it's a balance of both. Maybe I can take it up. I think it's a balance of both, right? And I think I mentioned earlier, you can't do only with AI without the human judgment and the critical thinking, and vice versa, right? So the way I see AI is an enabler. It's a tool, not the end, right? So it's. I always give this analogy saying if you want to go from point A to point B, Google Maps will only tell you the route, but you have to walk that route on your own, right? Nobody else will do it for you if you want to reach there. I think AI is somewhat similar, where AI is giving you a path, right, and helping you navigate, but then you have to walk that path and you have to reach that end. So that's and which is where your human judgment and human critical thinking comes into picture. Talking about the cost element, I think somebody spoke about that how big techs are also now focusing on the cost. So yes, while we have this boom of AI and everybody was using it, but now every organization is realizing that cost is also an element, right? So usage of AI definitely incurs a lot of cost, and we have to be very judicious about how we use that, and which is again the human angle comes into picture, and how we go up the value chain and ensure that we use AI not for the vanilla thing but more complex capabilities and more complex stuff, which will matter a lot. Those are my 2 cents.
Okay. See, again, how can we use AI in skill mapping? How is HR nowadays using AI in skill mapping? Is there some new innovations that are being tried out by this panel?
So, Amit, I would say looking at AI for everything is the wrong way to operate. Uh, every business context is different, and we realize this especially from what we discussed. For example, Ankush has a different experience, I have a different experience, probably everyone else has different experiences based on their realities. So, what we need to look at is we can use AI to understand certain frameworks, certain skill sets which may be required, which can help you bring down that effort from 3 weeks to about 4 hours. But what is important is AI will not replace. It also alludes to the earlier question. There is no conflict actually. AI operates on data that is available to us, but the emotions, the judgment, the intelligence comes from the NI that we have, the natural intelligence. I know my organization much better than what AI has learned. It will take some time for AI to reach a level where they understand the organization as well as I do, and we may reach there very soon. But reality is, we need to ensure that we don't take AI as the end all of everything, right? AI is there as an enabler, it's a tool. Use it, and I am using the word use very cautiously because it should not happen that we are being used by AI. They will take all the learnings from us and we become the end product for them. So for skill mapping, it's a very large topic. It's not something which you can do it at one time and say it's over. Your organization evolves, your people come and people go, your roles change. In fact, in my organization, we've had 3 pivots. We used to be 100% physical organization. Then we moved into another model. Now we are moving towards 100% online based model. Now, if I look at the kind of skills that I need are also changing. The person who was there relevant in the good old days in 2012, 13 may no longer be relevant if they don't have that kind of a skill. So I think AI will help you bring a framework and get some key points, but it's the human that will do the work. AI will help you reduce the work from 3 weeks to maybe 4 days, 4 hours. Sorry.
Correct. So very well put, Dr. Brilliant. Thank you. So it has been a wonderful discussion. One more question was on incentive. Would anyone like to, any panelists like to take this? Incentives are related to TAT of projects, turnaround time of projects. Also, I think that's already happening.
Yeah, so it's not just about turnaround time of a project. So that's what I think we were discussing, that it's not about project delivery. You need to go 2, 3 levels granular, understand what entails a project. Maybe look at the quality of project, maybe look at the quality of deliverable, maybe look at the customer matrix that the project moves, right? It is not just about that, I was given a project to be delivered by 31st of July, I've done it, rest everything I don't care. So I don't get incentivized. So you will not get incentivized only on 31st of August, right? Or 31st of July. We will look into the success of the project. Is the project making an impact at the customer end, or is the project making some impact on the organizational KPIs, right? Is it making life easier for a customer, or is it making life easier, help me get more projects, right? So that's where the real sense of now performance incentivization will lie, not just the turnaround time of the project.
Thank you. Thank you, Ankush. So, friends, it has been a wonderful discussion. Thank you, all the panelists and all the participants. We are recording this session and we'll be sharing the recording very soon. And which is where the maximum viewers of these sessions come into play. So, thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for giving us time. So nice of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Amit. Thanks a
Thanks,
lot,
Amit.
guys. Learn
Thank
Bye bye.